All right. Here we are, Tactical Tuesday. Why don't we go ahead and start? Quentin, you're first in my box there.
All right. So let's see. Coding deep dive yesterday. Talked about some good stuff that's relevant to this broader group. So one is kind of important. We have found like a potential data disclosure issue that we're noticing that we were hopeful was fixed by a very small patch in our code. But now that I'm looking at it closer, I'm not sure how our fix could have fixed it. Just to describe it like in a little bit more detail, like intermittently, somebody might see on a preview or a download screen, they might see an image of a PDF that's not connected to their form at all. So potentially from a form someone else had authored, which could allow them to see someone else's work, which would not be great.
Not good. So so that's the diagnosis. What's the step?
Well, that's not the diagnosis yet. That's just the symptom.
Okay, it's an observation.
So
all right, so tracking that down.
Yeah, we seem to have fixed it. It's intermittent, which is really frustrating. So we don't have like a really good reproduction yet. That's even like in one interview, we could get it every 10th time. We don't even have that yet.
This is on the preview screens?
As far as I can tell, it's what happens when you are viewing an image on the screen. Which we only really have on the preview screen in most interviews. But so I first noticed it on another interview where we also have that image on the download screen.
So it's just the preview image. There's no danger that
once you then click on that image, it will show you the full document, which could be a document that's unrelated to what you're working on.
It will show, okay. So does that mean there's a potential that the wrong documents could ever have been sent? Or is it?
It's definitely something to consider that is possible. Although in the example that I saw, it didn't affect the email, even though it affected what was on the screen. So I'm not sure if that's true for every instance of it.
Yeah, it could have just been like, if it's intermittent and it seems to sometimes happen and sometimes not, it could have like happened on the court version, but not the user version. And it would just be not visible at that point.
Okay, so it's not necessarily triggered by the image, something having to do with the document.
It's not just the preview image for sure. It's the actual document somehow is linked to the wrong file. And I now think it is upstream. So it's something in DocAssembly, which is, in some ways good, but we might need to have a good test case to prove that that's where it is in order to get it resolved.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Is there anything we can do to like compare to reduce the amount of times it happens, to compare two files or their names or something like that? And if they're different, try again, No.
Okay. It wouldn't really work here. It seems to be something that's when the files are combined into one document that the issue is triggered, which actually that's good because a lot of our interviews don't use that functionality. Some do, but not a lot of them don't. So it limits the scope a bit more as well. So at that point, it's getting a new name, so you can't really do anything and the name itself isn't really an important part of the file. And we're yesterday that it's assigned a number and then a random path on the server.
And
so
we're
no way to really see the actual file name.
Whenever we do a filing, not necessarily anytime we do an email, but our existing filings, we always CC the user's email address, correct?
If they've provided one, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that at least provides some check there. And then otherwise, if they're downloading, they'll definitely see it because they'll see it. Of course, that's part of the problem, right? It's not just that they gotta get the right stuff, it's that they might see someone else's stuff. Okay. Well, it goes without saying, but I guess it doesn't go without saying just to say it. This seems like the top priority right now.
There's only so much that we can do about it, unfortunately, because it's not.
Well, if we
had like a really consistent reproduction of it, then we would, we would probably have solved it at that point.
Right, right.
So actually that might be the most helpful thing, is for people to try to create small test interviews using, the important thing seems to be to use the PDF concatenate function, and then see if we can figure out the smallest reproduction that can reproduce it. And then we can say, okay, just run this 100 times and you might run into the problem. That would be really helpful, I think, to be able to
Is it
say.
some type of internal ID collision, or like any notions, or?
That's one possibility. But I've also seen the code that Jonathan uses to create those IDs, and it seems to be collision safe because he's creating a transaction on the database. So as long as Postgres doesn't have collisions when you create a database transaction, I don't really see how that created an issue for us. But unless there's some step that I missed where he freeze an ID, but it doesn't seem like it. Seems like it's purely sequential, and that it's totally should avoid race conditions the way that it's happening. But that's a point where, like, now we're looking at Jonathan's code, and the reproduction might be enough to solve it at that point. We don't necessarily have the cause. We can have reproduction, and we could get it. We could show it to Jonathan, and he'd be way faster at solving.
Right. Yeah. No. If you're pointed in the right direction. So yeah. So I think that's got to be a priority. Finding a way to reproduce. How was it discovered? Just in testing?
So someone mentioned it to me a few weeks ago. That was the first report I got. And I was like, hey, try running it. If sometimes things happen weird in the playground. So it's like, well, that's not really something I'm too worried about. So just try running it again after I restart the server, if maybe something was stuck there. And then I observed it on a production server the other day when I was trying to reproduce a bug. So that was an installed interview on the production server. The CDC moratorium one. That's where I saw it. And then that was the instance where the emailed files were fine, but the preview images were weird. They were from totally different forms.
Totally different forms within the same interview? And
type. They were ones I had run, which also made me like a little bit less worried about the problem, because most people only run one form. They're not like creating an account and running multiple different forms on our server.
Right. So it may be, although since we can't reproduce it, we can't say for sure, but it may be confined to interviews from that user.
That was my hope. There's some indications that it might not be. So at least Michelle's best memory is that she had seen files that she'd never uploaded, but.
And I have a video of one that was not a file that I had ever uploaded. But that was also in the exhibits class, which it seemed like just changing the static class attributes were like seemed to do something for that, right, Quentin?
Well, I thought we had solved it yesterday, and I was like, hey, this is great. The problem went away on this one reproduction. We had a saved session where we could reliably reproduce. Refreshing it changed the document when it shouldn't have. But then I looked at the original interview I'd spotted the problem in, and it didn't have any of that code was not implicated in that interview as far as I could tell. So
I'm just saying that where I saw it might not be a valid test for this, might not have valid information because it, might have been a problem with the static class. I'm just saying my finding is not necessarily hold.
Pretty unlikely. I think like if we're going to find one root cause for both of these interviews. So I think like the further upstream we look is the more likely source. I doubt we just happen to have these two seemingly very similar presenting problems where they're not caused by the same bug, but it's possible.
Okay, so we had one thing that was replicable, but now is not presenting anymore. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
But
we don't think that was all of the problem. We think that was
my best guess is that it was a coincidence that we just the symptom happened to go away on that interview because it's intermittent. That's very plausible.
Yeah.
But it was that fix regardless, hey, maybe it really did fix something, is installed on the production server already. So
Michelle, does the testing framework allow for downloading of the PDFs as part of the test?
Yeah. No. Let me correct that. It does under most circumstances, but the way we present the tables makes it difficult because the view and the download button have the same names. We can try and see if it'll download correctly, or if we can add kind of a hack for downloading in
I was
our
just thinking
table specifically.
if we wanted to supercharge the ability to do some testing, maybe we could set
Oh,
something up
got it.
and download a set of PDFs and compare
Sure.
them.
As
to
long
sort
as
of
we
see-
just have the same name for like the same name of the file that's being downloaded. Like, as long as we don't have
Mhm.
the same name appear multiple times on the page, then we should be able to do it. So we
So
wouldn't
just-
use our table.
I'm just thinking that if we want to think about a testing, an interview to test to try to replicate, if we think we have one that could replicate it in its intermittent fashion, we could then record the multiple downloads, find the instance when it did produce, and see if we can see any, disentangle anything from logs or the sequence of the numbers. Or I'm not
Sure.
entirely grasping at straws. I'm just trying to think of ways to make it so that we don't just have to keep doing it
Yeah.
enough times till we see it.
Yeah, for sure. That can be a thing.
What do you
You
think,
can just
Wendy?
fill one file with a bunch of duplicate scenarios. I mean, we could just have an interview file that like concatenates
So
a few
Do-
different times. And
So I
Do we
think like
have-
the best test would be like to run, 2 different interviews that have different files involved in them. Like 1,000 times each.
Yeah.
And just see if we can find a collision in those 2.
we can do that.
Yeah, because that's the basic behavior what we've seen, right? Like it's not the same interview.
They can even be the
with
same
a million
package.
pages wouldn't
You
really
want them to
trigger.
be the same package or completely separate packages?
I think probably just different interview YAML files that are running different sessions. I think is the key, not that they're in a different package.
Okay, if we do it in one package, then it should be easy to do in a test, though I need to add a way to loop.
Okay, let's say if we can get, that shouldn't be the only thing which drive people keep doing other things, but Michelle, if you could work to set something up to get that framework in place to be able to do the looping, then we can at least, see if we can replicate.
So
Yeah.
like a key part of the behavior is that there's not a difference in the file names. The file names are right.
Yeah, we have to look at
like you
them,
have to
right?
check the content
Yeah.
of the files. So maybe just uploading really differently sized PDFs in each one would be enough to like let us do a really rough comparison. See
That's
if
a good
the
idea.
file size match each time what we expected. And I think
There might be
given
a
like the issue has really only clearly been shown in reproduced in a preview, like also the preview thumbnail image. I don't know. So that's really probably where we want to focus, not on the view or download buttons.
we can also take screenshots, by the way.
Yeah, well,
The one thing
if
I'm
you have
worried
the-
about is the amount of memory that the artifacts take. There might be a limit on that. So we might,
I don't think we'd want to have to manually review it. So I don't know if there's any way to automate review of the screenshots.
Yeah.
But like, I think if we
Either-
could check file size each time, like that'll give us like a really gross idea of how the problem
file
is.
size, or you could take a hash of the file, or
Yeah, and it
okay,
wouldn't have-
that would
I was gonna
take
say,
more work.
if we're just comparing to file size, it's not like we have to save those as artifacts for runs, because that would be like a part of the testing. It would be in the repo. And it
Sure,
wouldn't-
if
yeah.
someone wants to, like, I can start work on it, but if someone is familiar with that interface, then that would speed up how long it will take to write those specific steps for the framework.
I guess
think
it's
it's just-
probably there wouldn't be someone faster than you at that, Michelle. But like if there's like
Okay, so we
yeah,
don't
just 'cause it would
know
take a lot of
the
knowledge of the
properties on a
testing
file object. Okay, that's fine. Then I will do the research.
I mean, like one possibility we're talking about is like, well, what causes this bug to show up? Is it to do with the memory being close to the limits, or like a bunch of concurrent things happening? So I don't know if that affects how that would be designed at all. But we probably like want to see if we can get it to trigger by just doing a bunch of things right around the same time or right at the same time. That seems like it could be part of what would make it happen potentially. So if we could fire off like a dozen
Mhm.
tests that are each doing a bunch of loops of the same thing,
Yeah.
that might lead to if they're all sequential, like it may not manifest. I don't know, but it just seems like that might be more likely to make it happen.
Okay, if someone can like, right, I can estimate what I understand the situation to be. If someone wants to write up more specific specs, I will be more likely to get what is being requested.
So we want to try to, yeah, if you want to write up your thoughts and on Teams, so then I could try to add some comments to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Michelle, why don't you start with where you understand, and Queen Kim can respond to that with a concrete thing, and then iteratively you'll zero in on it. Does that sound right for both?
Sure, yeah.
All right. And of course, we won't have this stop any other explorations that people think are fruitful, but at least this will give us something to look at. All right. Well, that was an update. What else you got?
The only other thing was great idea to set up the error reports. I think that's going to be really helpful for us to make sure we don't have people see as many potential showstopper kind of issues. And I'm looking into customizing the error screen people see, so it has like a little bit more helpful stuff. So I'll stop my update there.
I liked the ending on a positive note. All right. Michelle, you're next in my little window.
Perfect. Honestly, I don't think I have anything much to add to that. At some point, I'm trying to develop a way for organizations to run tests on a set of interviews that they want to run tests on a kind of a more scheduled basis. Since we had some trouble with regression with older interviews, but I have to work out some of the logistics before being able to do that, because before I will have more questions, but I need to work on kind of, because it doesn't seem practical for the organization to have stored in their own repository somewhere like tests that correspond to those interviews, because if the interview gets edited, then tests have to be updated in both places. But right now, I'm not sure how to tackle that problem. Bryce is looking confused. I'm saying like tests have their own, interviews have their own tests, right? So in their repository, they contain their own tests.
Yeah.
If we want to run something on multiple places, either we have all the tests for those interviews, right? So we have our own organization-wide tests we've written for those interviews, which would mean updating them in the organization, test file, and updating the local interview test file, right?
And why can't we just use the local ones that are updated along with the code?
The question is how to get at them. How to get at them and to get at the interview address as well, and how much information the admin is going to have to know in order to make that happen, right? So like it might be that all you have to do is put in the interview URLs, or it might be that all you end up having to do is put in the project, the repo names, or it might be that you need both, or it might be more complicated. I'm not sure, because we need both where to test and we need the test that needs to be run.
Right.
So like if I can wrangle those into the same place at the same time, I think we can get something going. But how that's going to happen is unclear yet.
Okay.
Cool. That's it.
All right. Cool. Bryce.
Not much outside of the code meeting that happened yesterday. Still going on, Tyler. I've got or at least I have a integrated working name change that like I've sort of officially sent to Amanda saying like, here's the stuff we should change before we get back to Jefferson Parish with a final version. And that, yeah, and so waiting to hear back from Amanda from Amanda on that. And doing a lot of tiling stuff that needs to be done. The only other thing that I also needs to be done, but I also don't want to like just spend days and days trying to figure it out and get lost, is the HTTPS stuff, which I feel like I have a decent idea of what the Java needs, but I'm just still confused on HTTPS. And that's something I think we probably ought to do before we reach out to Jefferson Parish as well. Since it's relatively simple, we don't need to do like a full Let's Encrypt style thing. We already have a certificate and everything. I just
Yeah, we have the
cert.
cert.
Yeah.
And we're off of the local dev version of the proxy server. It's now, we had run into that on Thursday.
Yeah. So yeah. Where I have gotten it off and I've gotten it working on. I turned it off mostly just because I feel weird about having it active without HTTPS. Even for testing stuff, there's like definitely secrets being passed back and forth. That I like. I'm gonna keep it off, and then once we get the HTTPS stuff, then yeah, I'll keep it up and running on prod, and I'll still develop locally and update it when I need to, but it will be like consistent and up at that point. So
cool.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, Kate. So nice to see you.
Hi. I figured this is probably my last meeting for a while, so I thought I'd come in and say hi. Bye.
Very exciting.
Yeah, I go on leave on
Hi,
Friday,
bye.
so I won't be around
Congrats.
quite a while.
What's your due date, Kate?
I'm
Do we want to do that on recording?
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah, it doesn't need to
yeah. I'm going on leave on Friday. Yeah, and yeah. So actually, Carolyn, I'll send you. I know you have some family law people that you talk to, but I'll send you one more. I would say Emma Hollis, who's
Oh, that'd be great.
actually,
Thanks.
yeah, she did some stuff up at NLA. She really liked working on it. And she's actually the temp for me at GBLS.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I
Because
would-
I have a question that Eleni asked me that I was going to chase down, and I'm sure you know the answer to, but I can follow that up with somebody else.
Well, feel free to. I still have like 2 more days, so.
Yeah,
feel
but
free
you're
to
probably
ask.
trying to pack 9 million things into your last 2 days. Oh,
Well,
I'll
feel free to
try you. I'll
ask.
try you. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try you. Yeah.
But
You can
yeah, I
forward it
would
on
say
if it's-
Emma would be a really good contact.
Is she at NLA now, or is she at GBLS?
She's at NLA now. She's switching to GBLS on Monday.
Oh, okay. So
it'll
does she
be-
have a GBLS email address then?
Yeah, that's it.
So,
Not checking my
so you're
email.
so Friday's the day. Are you going to be here on Friday, or you're not going
No.
to be here? You're right. So
No, I'm not
Friday
working
you're
on
on
Friday.
leave. You're on leave.
My
on
leave starts Friday,
Okay.
Yeah.
So exciting.
and I'll be
Very
out for
exciting.
6 months. Not checking work email. I'll have to do timesheets at some point, I guess. But
Yeah.
Very exciting.
yeah,
Mhm.
Very exciting.
thank you.
That's all I'm going to say right now.
Yeah, I think
All right.
my personal email is somewhere if you ever want to get in touch for any reason.
Very good. All right, Aubrey.
I don't have much, just trying to wrap up with our students who are leaving on Friday, which I think is everyone except for Joelle and Eleni. Just encouraging everyone to write all of their thoughts basically in GitHub issues and make sure their Trello cards are updated. If anybody else has thoughts on where they'd like information, but that's what I'm encouraging. And we had talked about the Australians joining us, and just an update, I haven't heard
back.
So I'm
All
going
right.
to send them an email later this afternoon and just say, hey, it's my last week. So if you are going to respond, message David on Teams, not me. But if they message me, I will still be there. So
Very good.
that's
Yeah,
really it.
I have a feeling they have been scared off.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's a bummer.
Yeah.
but
Well, it's
It's,
they're volunteering to do a bunch of work that turned out to be difficult given time zone stuff, and
Right.
maybe it's
Yeah.
not what they want to do.
Right. So
That's fine.
I'll give them one more encouragement, but other than that,
Yeah, well, you
I
can
think we
think of
went
it
through
as an invitation to re-engage, right? Like they can make whatever decision they'd like, but if they're still interested, we're still here.
So that was really it. And that Friday is going to be my last official day, but then 2 weeks after that, I'll be back as a clinical student. So you're not fully rid of me. So that's it.
All right, cool. Caroline.
I don't think I have anything. I have some plain language reviews coming up to do. And
So we're at tactical
that-
level, so yeah.
I don't think I've got anything tactical, except my server needs to be upgraded, and I'm not sure it's upgrading. But again, that's not assembly line related. I don't think I have
Well,
anything tactical.
Cool. Well, then we'll move